Good morning, or I guess it doesn't really matter, folks out there in podcast land, but next installment, Spilling the Tea in Studio D, and we're extremely proud to have this morning with us Caleb Carmikle, Coach Caleb Carmikle from Magnet Cove, fresh off of a playoff game, and I'll tell you, Coach, that was a heartbreaker. I was sitting over there. I had texted Candace, and she got me in on the game, and, man, I was glued to that thing, and, man, I was just yelling, like I would, Razorback game, actually. My wife is like, what are you doing? I had my headphones in watching that, and so she kind of got into it there too. So, but, the thing about high school ball, I wasn't like I was the head coach. I was kind of the get-back guy and did, offensive line, that kind of stuff, but when you get to that time of year, man, that's an exciting time of year, right?
Oh, it was just a phenomenal atmosphere, and you could really, I told our coaches yesterday when we were putting equipment up, and I think that's the loudest I've ever heard that stadium before, and just an awesome moment for our kids to be a part of. Wish it would have went the other way, but anytime you're playing after Thanksgiving, it's been a good year.
Well, I tell you the thing that was probably most impressive as I look back over your year is something my dad always instilled in us was it's not where you start, it's where you finish.
Right.
And that was so true with your season. And, I admire the way you attacked your season this year. I mean, you kind of played up at times and, being superintendent at a school that had some success there for a while, I know how tough it is when you do get successful at your level. If it's really tough to find people within your conference, or let's just say your classification that want to play.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But you guys did a good job there. I mean, and at the time, I think even sometimes your kids don't really understand what you're trying to do there. But I mean, it paid big dividends in the end for you guys.
It really did. And it was even more of a challenge this year. 2A football is kind of dying. These schools are all playing 8-man, and so
right.
Our conference, we had 4 teams in our conference, so we had to find 7 non-conference games.
Wow.
And so that made it even more difficult to keep them on task, because really the only games that matter are the conference games.
Sure.
And so your non-conference season is to prepare you to win a conference championship and make a playoff run. And when you play 7 of them that are just to prepare you, it's tough to keep them. And we had we hit some bumps in the road for sure early in the year and through the middle of the year, but they turned it on when they needed to.
Well, and the other thing too, I think as I look back on that game is, experience is just that.
Yep.
And giving Fordyce, I guess, the credit. I mean, they've been there 2 years in a row. They've won it, and you just can't place any kind of. I mean, that is what it is.
Right.
And your kids hopefully will continue to experience that.
Mm-hmm. That was big, the first time to be in a moment like that, because we had played in the quarterfinals a couple of years ago, but it was, aside from the first couple of drives of the game, it really wasn't competitive, and so I think it was one of those situations we looked up and we were up, and it's like, oh man, and when they scored and recovered that onside kick to start their comeback, you could feel everybody tighten up, and
right.
You could tell Fordyce had been in that kind of moment, and
right.
we hadn't.
Right.
Yeah. It was a great game. I was just so heartbroken. And this morning I'm driving up and I'm thinking, gosh, little baby Carmichael, when he got hired at Magnet. And listen, I mean, I'll tell you guys, he's super humble, very humble guy, and won't ever take credit for anything. But I just think back to when you were hired. How old were you? 22?
I was 23, fixing to turn 24.
Okay, 20, yeah. And I was like, lots of critics on Fearless Friday, and because to be expected, that's how a lot of people are. But just the amount of success and the things that you've done for the kids that I was able to witness as a former colleague, even with my daughter and just other kids that I was around, there was just a lot of growth in them, a lot of growth in you. I mean, I grow every year, but just this morning I was reflecting back, and it's pretty awesome to see, I was like, yeah, he kind of hushed everybody up with all these playoff runs and quarterfinals, but he would never take credit for that. And he'll talk about his coaches and kids and everything else, but it does start with leadership. So
yeah, I totally agree, and especially at the high school level, wins are great. Don't get me wrong, because but really and truly at the end of the game, when it's all said and done, it's bigger than the game of football. And so, I know for you to be in a position of coaching and being a head coach and having that desire, that had to come from a coach or a teacher somewhere along the line that inspired you. So kind of take us back to who maybe that might have been and when you made that decision to choose that career.
Yeah, when I was 15 years old, my father passed away in a helicopter crash. He was a game warden and played football, and it was the weekend after the first home playoff win in Heber Springs, where I grew up in a long time. And,
wow.
Starting as a sophomore and riding real high, and obviously that happened. That's tough on a teenage kid. And my high school coaches, they really saved my life, and I could have went down a very bad path, with a situation like that. And Steve Jansky was my head football coach in high school. He's athletic director at Fayetteville now, and him and the assistant coaches on that staff, they took me in. They didn't baby me. I needed tough love, and that's what they gave to me. And so that's really why I got into coaching, was to have an opportunity to make a difference in a kid's life like that.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. A lot of times, you don't see it probably as you're going through it. And some of these kids, you think maybe that you're not getting to. It's later on in life. Maybe they'll come back and say, hey, we've probably, even from an administrative standpoint, we've got those stories.
Right.
I can remember, I live in Jessaville, and, we still have our mailboxes on the highway. And one day I was out checking the mail and hear this loud pickup, coming flying down the highway. And I'm like, oh, my gosh. And the tires lock up and bounce and screech. And I thought, oh, gosh, and anyway, it was one of our formers that came in, and he was a great kid, but again, he had a situation, in his life that his parents divorced, and he made some pretty bad choices. But again, he came back to what he knew.
Right.
But it was the same thing. We kind of held him accountable. But at times, he said, everybody was up and down, but he said, you stayed consistent. Yep. But he said, I just wanted to stop and tell you thanks, first of all. But he said, second of all, I'm going to get my life right. I'm going to the Marines and all that. But he said, you're the first person. He said, I hadn't even been home to tell my folks, but this is what I'm going to do. I thought, okay, cool. And he said, no, I want you to know. He said, you did me right. So, and again, as we're going through that, I'm not thinking, that's just the right thing to do. Yep. So, and those are the reasons, like I say, you kind of get in this business, I think. So, numbers wise, I think you guys have, like you're saying with the invent or whatever you want to call it, the 8-man, have y'all struggled numbers wise, or y'all pretty consistent?
We've actually grown. We've been pretty fortunate. There's Magnet Cove really takes pride in its football, and our kids really enjoy playing. We've got a lot of kids that want to play. So we've not struggled with the numbers game. Now we're going to 3A next year, and so that kind of there's a reason for that. But we've been real fortunate that the turnout's been good in football.
Yeah. Well, and I guess 8-man is a good solution for some folks, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around some of it. I'm a Cutter graduate, and I know there were years. My entire high school career, we finished with 13 people. By the time we got to the end of the school year, so. I get that, and I always tell people my senior year with those 13, 2 of us had cast on. I should say 2 of them. I didn't have a cast, but the 2 with the cast weren't the 2 on the sidelines. So that tells you how good those 2 were. So, it makes sense in those situations because you couldn't have a full line scrimmage and those kinds of things. So, it's good in those types of situations. But again, I just hope it doesn't kind of deter some of the 2A schools to kind of go that way, because need to keep that classification alive and well too, I think.
Yeah, and you can really see that. There's some, like you said, there's some schools that are playing 8-man football that numbers wise that's what's helping them keep football alive. And then there's anytime you let a new group compete for a championship, there's going to be people that manipulate the system, and so there's some that are probably playing with as many kids as a lot of schools playing 11-man football. That just is what it is. But I hate it for 2A football because that's a small town Friday nights.
Oh yeah,
you can't beat it.
Right. Well, and I think a lot of times I was at Fountain Lake and we were 3-4A back and forth a little bit, but I think the other thing that folks don't understand too is it took us a while to get there, but the number of coaches sometimes figures into that, and so kind of explain that to folks maybe where they'll have a little bit of understanding about that.
Yeah, you talking about the number of coaches coming in and out, or how many you have on your staff?
On staff.
Well, that's so important. I mean, because we don't just coach on Friday nights.
Sure.
It's not just the senior high team.
Sure.
Like at Magnet Cove, we coach 3rd through 12th grade, and so we coach the Pee Wee and 7th grade and junior high and senior high, and the more bodies you have to be able to specialize in a football practice, the better opportunity it gives you to win. And you go look at in any classification, and especially in the small schools, there's a lot more separation. The schools that are playing after Thanksgiving and the semis and state championship, they've usually got a sideline full of coaches,
right?
But and it's got to be good coaches, because you can have too many guys out there that just don't know what they're doing. But I think that's very important in being able to really teach the fundamentals of the game. You've got football. It's a classroom.
Oh, absolutely.
And if you're not differentiating your learning on the football field, you're not going to have any success. And so the more guys, more men you have that can separate those kids out and develop them, the better.
Right. Yeah. And like you're saying, with the small schools, when it comes to coaching, there's a lot of things. It's almost like, don't get me on my soapbox, but a lot of folks think, when the lights go off, hey, we're done. And nothing like that. And then, they talk about accountability, with tests and a lot of these things. But really and truly, I mean, the biggest piece of accountability is when the lights are on. You're being judged by hundreds of people, especially with social media and all that stuff. I mean, that was one of the things, as the game was going on the other night, they had the little
comments.
They were popping up text and or whatever it was going on there, and I was just thinking, man, it's just progressed to this, and really, there's really wasn't any way, I guess, to filter that. I mean, they're kind of taking a chance on some of that stuff, and some of them just don't have a clue.
Right.
I mean, I think some of them probably well intended.
I think it's just hard because people. It's just easy from the outside looking into. We talk about perception and reality to think about what goes on, but it's just like sitting in an administrator spot or a coach's spot. You just don't know until you're there, and you have to experience it. So, pros and cons with everything. But so back up. Now, you guys, you and Godfrey graduated from Tech, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and then because I don't know that Darren knows after you graduated from Tech, kind of tell him,
Yeah.
where you guys went.
Graduated from Arkansas Tech, and I'd actually accepted a job as a junior high football coach at Stuttgart. And during the course of that transition time, I'd applied, I don't know, a month or so before for a head coaching job at a private school in Louisiana, just trying to get interview experience,
Sure.
And ended up, I don't know if everybody down there turned the job down or what, but I ended up getting a call and got to go interview, and they called an offer for the job, and took guy I went to college with down there with me. So we were two 22-year-olds, the head coach and a coordinator. Had no clue what we were doing, but it was a great learning experience for sure.
Right.
Yeah, and then I think what was the story like? Your dad and Steve Cook were really friends. Steve Cook's from Magnet, so they kind of interviewed you, kind of as
it was
a
kind of a courtesy interview on that one too, I think.
Yeah.
I just always tell them, I'm like, God's got a plan, and
Yeah.
so you end up where you're supposed to end up. So
Right. Well, and that's the thing, when it comes to, getting opportunities like that is, if you see a chance, take it. That's the way I've always looked at it. Like Candace just said, if it's not in God's will, hey, it's not in God's will.
Right.
It was so funny, though, when I met him. I may have told you this, but I was like, because I was so sad when I was leaving Fountain Lake, because I'd worked, right there with Donald for 3 years. And I was just like, Caleb comes in, that next year, and I'm like texting Donald, it's like your son. It's like a mini Donald. I was like so excited because they just have a lot of similarities.
Right.
It's really cool.
So, as far as, I mean, like you're saying, when you jump in there at 22, I mean, so you've got to lean on the experiences, I guess, mostly that you had probably, in high school. I mean, you probably took some, I guess, theory type classes in college.
Yeah, I was real fortunate to have good guidance whenever I went into college. I knew I wanted to be a coach, and Coach Shansky, he told me, he said, you need to go volunteer somewhere and get some experience. And so I spent my last 3 years of college volunteering at 3 different high schools: Collin Christian, and Dover, and Clarksville. And so the biggest reason for it was to network, because you know how it is.
Oh, sure.
In this business, so you've got to have a connection somewhere to get a job, because people, they've got to trust you.
Right.
And so I learned a lot of things at those 3 places, just being around their program that helped me. So I wasn't coming in just completely blind, but it's different once you're sitting in that chair, for sure. There's a lot of things that hit you, and you're like, oh my gosh, what have I gotten myself into?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. He even met his better half at Magnet Cove.
I did.
Oh yeah. Wow. Yeah. So see, that is a big God thing right there.
It
right?
is.
He's a great coach, but she's a better card player. Am I right?
I would have to.
You got to
have
admit
to
it.
disagree.
Yeah. Well, and the thing about coaches, that even I look back, and even as crappy as our teams were, just from numbers and stuff at school, the coaches that came in and out of my life, and the some of the life lessons that I learned from them, that still have impacted me, today when I look back and really reach down in some of the stuff. I think about it like this morning, getting up at 4 to climb on the elliptical and watching, I don't know, it was this series on ESPN with Gus Malzahn and these guys gritting it out, and I'm thinking, heck, I'm 54, old and fat, and it kind of pumps me up, just to get off the elliptical. Some of these coaches, So, but there's a lot to be learned, a lot to be said with these guys, and so, as you carry these lessons through life like that, what are some of the top ones you think maybe that you got from your high school folks, and then that you've pushed on out to your kids?
I think the biggest thing is understanding how to deal with adversity and conflict and situations that maybe could be uncomfortable. Those type of skills that I think that in today's world, kids are really coddled, and sports and for me, football is one of the few tools left we have to push them and teach them what it's going to be. The world's going to chew them up and spit them out if they're not ready. And so they have to be prepared when they leave us to go into the world, whether it's to go to college or to go to work. And those lessons of, like you said, waking up on time and going to work even if you don't feel like it, and pushing through a tough situation. You've got to have those skills to be successful in life, and I think football teaches that.
Oh yeah, for sure. And that's one of the things, you said it earlier, is the tough love. And a lot of times, I think for whatever reason, some of the parents today want to be friends versus parents, and that's just a different dynamic, than I grew up with, for sure. But when we get them, we've got them, a lot of times, more times during the day, especially when school's in session, than the parents do. And we got to take those quality minutes and make quality young men and women to the best of our ability. And it's a challenge. There's no doubt about it. Again, I mean, especially at Fountain Lake, sometimes we were, dealing with kids that were living with grandparents, and
that generation gap.
Yeah, it's tough out there. But thank goodness we have that opportunity to do that. So, but at the end of the day, though, I think coaches are, good. The good coaches that get out there and get after it, and and gain the trust of the parents, gain the trust of the kids, and that's something else I think that I've seen progress through the years is, that communication with the parents is so important.
Very important. I'm real fortunate at Magnet Cove. We've got a pretty good group of football parents, and they believe in what we're doing, and they see how bought in their kids are, and so they, for the most part, we don't have many issues. also the athletic director, and so I get to deal with
Right.
He gets both sides
yeah,
of it.
a lot of different angles of it.
Right.
But and any time there is a conflict, whether it's with me or with one of my coaches, with a parent, it always goes back to communication or miscommunication, and so it's so important to communicate because that's their baby. You
Sure.
know?
Oh,
And,
yeah.
And I certainly get that, and we both have the same goal in mind, but sometimes the way we want to get there, we may view it differently. If you just sit down and talk about it, a lot of times you can get it worked out.
Right.
Yep.
Well, and a couple things I was thinking about today. Even at the collegiate level, there was a guy for sure. There again, it was Malzahn at Central Florida, but he was talking about, one of the coaches said that he had to remind himself and the players, even as tough as it gets, as competitive as it gets, they've got to find a way to keep it fun in there where the kids aren't hating what they're doing. And with that being said, I saw a social media clip of Pee Wee football, and there was a kid just dancing away on the sidelines, and reminded me of my own kid when we were doing pitching machine baseball. He was, we were going home that day, and he had had his little juice box and his, I guess like goldfish crackers with a Kool-Aid mustache, and I was saying, well, you need to do this and that, and and he looked at me and he said, Dad, it's just a game. I mean, he's 5 at the time, and I was like, ooh, that hurt. And I said, but you're right, so.
I was like fully expecting Carmichael to show up in his visor and his flip flops today.
No visor.
I'm like, what? What's going on?
Yeah,
Anyway, but,
and that's a tough balancing act too, because
It is.
I mean, when you're out there, it's business. You're grinding it out, but to the to that point, I mean, not to the point where you want the kids hating it,
Exactly, because right now, this is my 5th year, and we've got one kid playing college football that's gone through our program. A couple more that had some opportunities, but most of these kids, when the last game is over, that's it, their football career. And so, you want to compete at a high level, and you're expected to win and all that. But at the same time, like you said, you've got to be able to keep it in perspective that it's just a game, and you want these kids to have memories that stick with them forever.
Sure.
And so there is a fine line with that.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, too, I think, with the kids that have those opportunities, I mean, you want them to take those opportunities for the right reason.
Right.
It's something that they love, and for some of them, it's their way to a better path in life. I mean, they're going to get an education and those kinds of things. So it's like I said, it's a balancing act. So
It is.
Well, I guess we'll wrap it up. But the thing I was going to ask you, though, I mean, I know, as a coach, for sure. I mean, you said you had coaches touch your life and those kinds. So let me ask it this way. So what's your best memory probably as a player, and then maybe a best memory as a coach?
Man, that's a good one. My best memory as a player is probably when I went through all that with my dad. That next week we played at West Fork, second round of the playoffs, and it was had a chance to win. And Heber Springs had traditionally been not good at football for a long time, and Coach Jansky came in and kind of changed that culture there. And so my dad's number was 81 whenever he was in school, and there was a senior tight end. His name was Jake Logan. I didn't even know they were going to do this, and we get ready. It's like Thursday before the game, and he was number 81, and senior could have been his last game ever. Play, and he walks in and hands me the jersey. He said, "I know this is your dad's number. I want you to wear this on Friday night." And,
wow!
And that I'll never forget that. It was pretty special. As far as best memory as a coach, this whole year has been the rocky start, and we had some internal issues we had to clean up, throughout the year. The way that those guys all came together, just incredible. And the thing that really set it off, I think we went to Gurdon. It was our second conference game. We had beaten Mount Ida the week before, and we're down 13-0, and going in the fourth quarter, and we ended up coming back, and a little freshman kicker kicked the game winner as time expired to win that game. Just the celebration after that ball game.
He's going to remember that forever.
I've
I was so excited.
Never been a part of anything like that before. And that was pretty. And they, the whole leading up into that game, Gurdon, when it gets late in the year, they've got these new LED lights, and they turn the lights off when they run out, and so we were waiting on them, walked in behind them, and they play Hell's Bells. And so
Oh, yeah.
after the game's over, we played that all week in practice. After the game's over, we're in the locker room, and
Right.
kids gets a speaker and starts playing Hell's
Right.
Bells. Now that was pretty
That's
pretty special.
awesome.
Yeah, that is good.
Hey, you got to ask him some random stuff. You can't let him out of here without like being.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
I think one of our favorite questions is just kind of, I mean, what's on your playlist in your vehicle, driving around?
I'm a big Jimmy Buffett, Kenny Chesney Island type, like
Yeah.
Miss Bennett said.
Yeah.
I'm a frequent wearer of flip flops, and anytime I can make
I
myself
gotcha.
feel like I'm at the beach, I'm all
Yeah.
about it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm all over the place. Yeah, I used to work in radio, country mainly, but I mean, if it's good. I mean, I pulled up this morning. She got out looking at me. She knows
No,
that's how
I was
roll.
dancing. I was jamming because it was
Is
pretty
that what you
loud.
call that?
Hey,
Oh my Lord.
Let's
Ooh.
talk about what happened to you this
Lord.
morning. Let's talk
Yeah.
about what happened to you this morning.
Yeah, I got to work safely.
Yes,
Yeah.
you did.
Yeah, that's
you
right.
got to meet a nice,
Yeah, state
nice
trooper.
officer this
Yes,
morning.
Very nice. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, let's see what you had a random question the other day. What was it that you asked?
I'm trying to remember.
It's hard.
I don't know, but this has just popped in my head. I don't even know. You may have to edit this out. So I'm listening to Bobby Bones a couple weeks ago. I listened to him on the way to work a lot, and they have just some random funny crap. And this girl comes on there, and I meant to ask you this at work because I was like, I wonder. So this girl comes on, and she said, was talking to Bobby Bones and said something about she was making butter for her family out of her breast milk. And Bobby Bones was
Oh.
like, what? And so then they
Yeah,
got in the conversation, would you eat the butter?
Mm-mm.
So would you eat the butter?
No.
No.
What if it was
No.
your wife's?
Nope.
No.
Nope.
Anyway.
No way. No. See,
And I was dying. I'm like, good gosh,
you
that's
see
so
why I don't
random.
let her ask the questions? Man. Oh,
Hey, look, I've been really nice. Kayla's
Yeah.
probably like,
uh-huh.
oh my gosh, she's been really nice today.
She's never
Yeah.
been this nice to
Right,
me.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
do pick on him, but y'all know
Yeah.
if I pick on you, then
Oh Lord.
you're topping my list.
Yeah, that's why we don't let her do a whole lot of talking. Oh my gosh. Yeah, Michael, you may want to hit the old 7-second delay button back
You need
there.
to leave it. You just need to leave it.
Okay. Yeah.
He's like,
But I'll have to disagree. That was if you called that dancing this morning, we need to get you signed up maybe
Well, I
with
mean, what were you listening to?
Stevie Wonder, a little superstition.
Oh yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember.
So, yeah. When I was superintendent that day at Fountain Lake, you came pecking on my window. Oh, that was Panama from Van Halen.
Oh, yeah.
That
Yeah.
cranked way up.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But sometimes you got to, knowing the day you got it, you got to get in there, got to get your head right.
Yeah, Donald and I put on some Nelly
Yeah.
whenever we were having a bad day, and just throw some country grammar on, and
Well, you
then
know,
we'd be like smiling. And
this
it'd be all
is
good.
totally kind of off the subject, but what's cracking me up is all of these, even Nellies of the world, even Snoop Dogg, Pitbull are coming to country now.
Yeah.
Because they squeeze the juice, I guess, out of their genre. Now they want to come over to country and get a few more bucks. But
Yeah.
Hey,
Hey,
I'm all about it. Come
I
on.
love me some Nelly. I'm just saying.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Coach, man, we appreciate you coming in.
Yes.
And again, continued success, and I appreciate what you do for the young men because
Amen.
being on both sides of the ball, I mean, I know it's important because, I know AAA has sent out a study. I don't have the specifics in front of me, but the kids that participate in extracurricular activities is just their success rate across the board, whether it be academics, as far as attendance, these kinds of things are way above those that don't. And, I think, getting kids involved is so important. And as you spoke to earlier, there's so many life lessons to be learned, when you're part
Yep.
of a team. And a lot of these kids, I think sometimes it's easy for us to, kind of overlook a kid every now and again. But when they're on a team, we're more likely, I think, to see them in a different light.
Yep.
Yeah, and he can tell you how many times I would call him and say, "Hey, I need you to come talk to this kid." If they were having trouble in class or whatever, and
Right.
I knew he could reach the kid
Yeah.
if I was having trouble.
Yeah, there's a
so.
lot of kids. The only reason they're coming to school is for
Oh,
whatever sport
absolutely.
they're
That's
playing.
right.
You know?
Absolutely.
That's right.
Yeah, and a lot of times the coach is the only one that can break through
Right.
and get to them.
Yeah, because you're with them so much.
Yeah,
You get-
absolutely. Okay, well, again, thanks for coming.
Appreciate it.
Enjoyed it.
Appreciate you coming in. And this will do it for this session of Spilling the Tea in Studio D.